Have you ever thought about happiness as a skill that you can actually learn and build? I had never thought about this, and that is why I am talking to Declan Edwards, the founder and creator of BU Happiness College. And he talks all about how happiness is a skill that you can build and develop and why it is so important. This is an amazing conversation, so I'm going to do a quick intro of Declan and then we're going to jump straight in. Declan Edwards is a leading expert in the science and skills of happiness. He's the founder of BU Happiness College, a social enterprise on a mission to grow global happiness by helping individuals and workplaces master the tools for well-being, resilience, and fulfillment. With a background in positive psychology and experience as a global keynote speaker, coach, and author, Declan has empowered thousands of people from CEOs to school teachers to build happier lives and healthier cultures. His work blends evidence-based strategies with practical human insight and always a touch of humor. If you want to know how to build the skill of happiness, this is a conversation for you. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, Declan, and welcome to the Lead with Less podcast. I'm so excited that you're here.
Hello, Tash. The feeling is mutual. I'm pumped to be here.
Oh, so excited. So I am really looking forward to talking about the science and the skill of happiness. I've been following you for a while on LinkedIn, and I have to say, always love your unhinged posts the most, especially your Gen Z vocab for us millennials who have no idea what anyone's talking about these days. I really love your energy and your presence, and I really love that you talk specifically about happiness. So I know that a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from this episode with you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, shout out to my little brother, Connor, who is 14 and taught me a lot about Gen Z slang, because I am in the millennial category too and I have no idea what's being said.
Yeah, Riz, slap, no cap. And I'm like, I just don't know. I don't know.
I wish I could say I'm going to work them into this interview and this conversation we're about to have, but I don't think I will.
Yeah, we don't want to lose too many people. All right, let's start with the most important question. The science and skill of happiness. Like, what an amazing topic to work in. What brought you to doing this work and why this work in particular?
I think a lot of people, when they first meet me, make the assumption that, oh, of course this guy works in the science of happiness. He seems like a pretty chipper bloke, seems pretty happy. This matches his character. But if they'd met me, coming on to 15, 16 years ago now, what they'd find is like, I actually wrestled a lot with the concept of happiness, particularly throughout my high school years. I was very much, and even in early university, I was very much the kind of person who thought happiness was an outcome of success. You know, if I achieved enough, if I was successful enough, if I was accomplished enough, then maybe I would feel good enough. Then maybe I would feel happy. And what I thankfully found out relatively early in life was that that wasn't working for me. I was spending all this energy and time chasing happiness, and it just seemed to move faster than me. It was, I'll be happy when I finish high school and get into uni. Then I'll be happy when I get good grades. Then I'll be happy when I start dating someone. Then I'll be happy when I'm out of that relationship. Like, there was always happiness around the next corner. And so for me, I started going, well, isn't that strange? And at the same time, I'd come across some great coaches and mentors, and I now look back at them as some of the great friends in my life and great influencers who seemed to just have this skill set that I'd not yet been exposed to. It's like they knew things that I didn't know. They had a toolkit that I didn't yet have. And so I started asking them, like, how do you know this stuff? What is this secret of life that you tend to have? You all seem very happy and successful and fulfilled. What is that? And so often they kept coming back to this idea, positive psychology, of mindfulness, of self-reflection and introspection, all these skills. And particularly positive psychology stood out to me as a scientific field dedicated to understanding what makes life worth living, what makes humanity good, what do we do well, how do we do more of that? And so I found myself getting increasingly interested in that, and through a couple of little ducks and weaves in my career path, ended up studying it as a postgraduate degree at university, and just the love affair with positive psychology just flourished there. I went, wow, this is a skill and a toolkit. Happiness is not some destination that I might reach one day if I achieve enough. It is a series of skills that I can work on learning now, and that I'll probably do imperfectly for the rest of my life. Like, I'm not going to nail them, but if I try to do them a little bit more intentionally, good things seem to happen. And that whole skill set, I went, isn't it wild to me that, this has been researched the last 40 years, but most academic research is read by maybe 30 to 40 people in its lifetime, if you're lucky. So there's all this amazing work done about like how we can live happier, more successful, more fulfilling lives. But unless you were exposed to it in school, or you happened to stumble into it like I did at university, Or you were one of the very, very lucky people who had super emotionally intelligent parents who were teaching it at home, which bless their cotton socks and bless their hearts. I think all of our parents have done the best they can with what they had. The skills and science of happiness was not something very openly spoken about or taught in the era that they were raising a lot of us. And so unless you've sorted it out somewhere, how are we ever meant to learn it? And that's where I fell in love with it. That's where I started to go, okay, well, maybe I can be not the world's best happiness researcher or the best academic, but maybe I can be the guy that translates that and takes that and packages it in a way that is understandable and pragmatic and human, and that people can actually use to live a happier life. And that's the work I've now dedicated, over 10 years of my life to doing, and I hope to do for the rest of my life.
Wow. And you run the BU Happiness College. So it's literally a college on practically applying all of these skills.
100%. We say it's like a college. We say it's the Harvard of happiness. It's for teaching skills that make people happier and better human beings, not just better employees. Our current education system was built in the Industrial Revolution era, where the ideal outcome of education was how do we make great employees? And we're still stuck with that system. And I think we now need to start asking the bigger question, how do we make great human beings? And then as a byproduct of that, people become better employees, because we know when people learn the skills and science of happiness, they tend to be better employees. They tend to be better leaders. They tend to lead to better organizations.
Yeah, I really love that. Also, I mean, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole of AI, but I think it's really relevant to what you just talked about around building better humans who then turn into better employees and better leaders, because everyone's grappling with this whole, oh my God, AI is going to take over and everyone's going to take our job. Like we're all going to lose our jobs. And whereas what you're saying is, how do we actually become more human, right? How do we tap into that essence of us? And I think like when you look at kids, I think in essence, we are very joyful, happy souls. We're very joyful, happy beings, but then that gets taken out of us by life, right? And the schooling system, right? Like just be a robot like everyone else. So yeah, I really love that. And I think that your work is probably just going to come more and more and more pivotal with where life is going and with where the world of work is going in particular. But your zone of genius is helping people understand that happiness isn't only a feeling, it's a skill that they learn and build. Can you explain that? Why is this important for people to know that happiness is actually a skill? It's not this feeling that we just hope we get.
Yeah, for me, this was one of the most pivotal and profound learnings that I had early in my happiness research career as I started delving into the science of happiness, was that we can actually learn to be happier. Because I mentioned before, like so much of my life was chasing happiness as an outcome, right? Like it was the I'll be happy when trap. And no matter how much I achieved or how fast I ran, I never quite got there. If I did get there, and maybe, I don't know, your listeners will relate to this. Even when I did get there, I felt good about myself and felt happy about my life for all of like 3 to 5 minutes.
Fleeting, right? It's like, and then there's the next thing.
And then there's the next thing. There's always another thing to chase. So just this paradigm shift of going, well, hang on. Yes, the external things have an impact on happiness. I'm not going to be someone who sits here and goes, hey, what you do for work, how financially secure you are, where you live has no impact on happiness. I think that's a very privileged thing to say. We know that the external circumstances that we face in life have an impact, but it's not normally as big of an impact as we like to think it is. And what's much larger impact is what is inside of us, what we bring to all of those chapters of life anyway, the skills that we have in us. And historically, these skills were called soft skills. We try to now call them human skills or happiness skills. But I was learning about them going, I've never really learned about or practiced these skills. This is over 10 years ago. I was first being exposed to them. I'm like, well, no wonder I'm not great at them. I haven't practiced them. I remember someone once said to me, for me, any skill is something that we can work on and practice over time. And we're going to stuff it up. We're going to make mistakes. But over time, we will get better. And I remember someone called me out on that once because I'd just in passing conversation said, I wish I could be good at drawing. I'm a terrible drawer. I'm bad at drawing. And this person has known me for a while. They know my ethos around happiness skills being learnable and teachable. And they went, okay, well, when did you last intentionally practice the skill of drawing? And I went, probably when I was like 7, maybe 8. And they went, okay, so you're a man in his 30s who draws like an 8-year-old. And I went, valid, true. And they said, why are you expecting anything different?
Oh my gosh.
Factual, right? And so then we go, well, okay, for most of us, when we look at some of the skills of happiness, emotional awareness and literacy, self-compassion, goal setting and motivation, discipline and drive, like these are just some, we teach 70 different skills of happiness at BU Happiness College. But for so many people, I go, hey, when did you last intentionally learn about them and practice them? And the answer is maybe during some like mental health or PE class in high school. Maybe if you were one of the lucky people with emotionally intelligent parents
Or
who
I
had some
went on a
conversations at
retreat
home.
2 years ago.
Or I went on a retreat
money.
2 years ago and I, did this mindfulness retreat and I feel really good about it. And I didn't do anything with it since. And I'm like, yeah, so you're a beginner at the skills of happiness. And as much as that can be confronting, I think it's also incredibly inspiring for me. It's hope provoking to go, well, I can get better then. And like any skill, all skills follow the same 4 paths, right? The first step is you're unconsciously incompetent, which is ignorance is bliss. You do not know what you don't know. And my hope in our conversation today is that we're going to forcefully thrust some people in your audience from unconsciously incompetent at the skills and science of happiness to level 2, which is consciously incompetent of going, oh shit, I've never learned this. This is new
I know what
to
I don't know now.
I know what I don't know. Wow, I've spent my whole career focused on technical skills, right? There's all this research that says, I believe it was Harvard Business Review just say that 90% of learning and development in the workplace is focused on technical skills to make you better at your job. Only 10% is focused on human skills that make you a better human being. That is disgusting to me. We need to flip those numbers, especially to your point in the era of AI now. So maybe we get to level 2, and as a result of this conversation, people go, this is something worth learning about and doing more with. Then we get to stage 3, conscious competence. Okay, we get in the hang of it. We're learning. We've got some tools and resources. We're practicing. Still takes a lot of effort. We still stuff it up along the way. Eventually, with enough guidance, support, practice, with enough accountability, we reach level 4, which is unconscious competence, where you're like, these are actually kind of second nature to me now. I'm meeting myself with a lot more kindness and compassion rather than self-judgment and shame. And I'm doing that without really needing to think about it. I'm leading others with a more humanistic lens. And I never used to be able to do that without really thinking about it. I'm communicating more effectively. I'm understanding my emotions before they take hold and overwhelm me. And these are all skills that you're now really good at because you put in the work to get better at them.
I particularly love talking about like happiness as that practice, because we practice all sorts of things. We're practicing every day at work. It's like, or practice a sport or some other thing. But then we get told about this new thing and you're like, well, I'm not good at that. Or they try it once and it's like, it's hard. Or they try it once and they hope that it's this miracle thing that changes everything. But that the control you can have over thinking about happiness as a skill set, it's so empowering. It's so powerful. Because I agree with you, the conditional happiness, and I think that's the default of what society teaches, is our happiness is conditional of when I, then I'll, when I get the goal, when I get the outcome, when I get the achievement. But then we're always on that hamster wheel because it's always outside of the control versus being able to really go, well, actually, this is a skill set that I can build. I can learn these maybe top 3 things that I want to actively practice because I know that they'll make the biggest difference. And we'll talk about some of those ways that we can do that. Just the control factor that gives people back is such a huge piece. Because wouldn't you say through your research that as soon as people feel a lack of control, happiness goes down? Would you say, is there a correlation with that?
Yeah, but whether you call it control, certainty, predictability, structure, whatever word we sub in there, we do know that, the human mind likes to keep things nice and safe and secure and structured and predictable. It doesn't like uncertainty. There's a great saying, anxiety thrives in ambiguity. The challenge with that is we have this deep ingrained need for control. But so much of life is uncontrollable. There's so much that's actually not ours to control. And I talk to a lot of people about this, even when they come to me and they're talking to me about goals that they've set. And they might say, my goal is I want to be a leader or a manager. I want to get a promotion. I'm like, cool. That's not in your control.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just click your fingers and decide that you're getting the promotion. That is an outcome-oriented goal that you can influence. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of stuff that you could do to make that more likely or to jeopardize it. But you can't control it. So what are the things inside your control that make it more likely? Talk to me about those. And that's when they go, well, actually, you know what? I could upskill at how early and effectively I have difficult conversations. That's a skill I'm not very great at. I think it's jeopardizing my ability to get a promotion. Okay, that's in your control. That's a skill that you can take ownership of and responsibility for and learn about and get better at. Now we're talking, right? Now we're in the driver's seat. We're not gambling our happiness on something that's not ours to control. The beauty of that too is it means that if you do get the outcome, gorgeous, let's celebrate it. You know, if you get the promotion, love that for us. But if you don't, you haven't gambled all your happiness on it. You've still built this skill that will stay with you for the rest of your life. That's what I love
And you can
about
actually
this.
transfer it to something else. Like it's
100%.
not just this tunnel visioned, it's this or nothing.
Yeah, you
Right?
learn in the example we gave, if you learn how to have clearing conversations early and effectively, let me promise you, that's not just valuable at your current workplace, it's valuable in any workplace. It's also valuable in your marriage and relationships. Like
Your
this is
family,
valuable
your friends.
anywhere. So like I love the skills of happiness because they're so translatable to life. They're not just specific to context. These are deeply ingrained human skills that you will take with you forever.
Yeah, I talk about that with leadership skills as well. Like, I do leadership development and I actually talk a lot about, you know, when we do influencing or when we do feedback or courageous conversations or setting clear expectations, like do this with your partner, do this with your children, do this with your family. Like this is not only in the context of work, it's any relationship dynamic. But what I love in particular about this happiness piece, it's relationship with self and a relationship with others. And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think what is really coming through for me as you were talking is just like the accountability and the ownership piece of like, can we get people to take accountability and ownership of their own happiness experience, right? Again, this comes back to, okay, well, what am I in control of? Well, my thoughts, my feelings, and my actions. That's the only three things that I really can control. I can influence a lot of other things. But if we can get people to understand this happiness as a skill set that we can develop and grow and learn, if we can get more people to take ownership and accountability of their own experience, I feel like the world would be a completely different place because it wouldn't be this, you made me, I'm this because of, you know, and as you said rightly, there are things that influence. To say there isn't, that is privileged, and we could never say that. Again, what am I taking ownership and accountability for in terms of my experience?
And what do I do with it from here?
Yeah.
I love the idea of like, I cannot determine what cards life hands me, but it is my responsibility to figure out how I'm going to play those cards. And what we know from, you know, positive psychology and the research is when people focus on what is theirs to control and take ownership, when people focus on their happiness, and I want to say here, like prioritizing their happiness in a way that's healthy, not detrimental. So for me, there's a big difference between traditional selfishness, which traditional selfishness is my happiness first at the expense and detriment of other people's happiness, and healthy selfishness, which is I take care of my happiness for the benefit of those around me. Because let me promise you, when you are happy and well, and but I don't mean happy all the time, I just mean like you're looking after your happiness skills, when you're showing up as the best version of yourself, when your loved ones get to interact with the best of you rather than just what's left of you at the end of the working week, you are a genuinely better leader, partner, parent, friend. Like just we become better versions of ourselves when we learn these skills. And we know it from the research. It's called the happiness ripple effect. People learn these skills, they spread it, they become more pro-social, so they're more likely to be kind and giving and generous. You know, we know that when people are really struggling with their happiness skills, when they're in a space of burnout, overwhelm, emotional exhaustion, they're more likely to act in a way that doesn't align with their best self and doesn't leave a positive ripple effect on those around them. So I think genuinely the kindest thing we can do for the world and the way we can all play a part in making the world a happier place is if we learn these skills for ourselves, we then get an opportunity to share them with others, not from the perspective of other people's happiness becomes our responsibility, because it's not, but from the perspective of I get to play a role in influencing and supporting someone else's happiness. It's still their end responsibility what they do with it. But I get to play an opportunity to give them some space, some resourcing and support, and we get to lean on each other. Like I used to be a big subscriber to the idea that like happiness was an inside job and it was up to all of us just to build happiness on our own individually. I know now that that's actually, there's truth to it, but it's not fully correct. I now believe happiness starts as an inside job, but it's really nurtured and expanded collectively. It's nurtured and
Because
expanded.
we are collective
together.
beings. We are tribal
Exactly.
beings.
Yep.
Yeah. And you can tell, like, when there's the lack of community, your happiness by default goes down. And for me in parenthood, I really struggled because we didn't have any family or close friends around. And so my happiness was really jeopardized of that lack of connection, that lack of community. There's things I can do by myself. But again, like that ripple effect, I really love what you talked about that, because Jeremy Dean, the founder of Riders and Elephants, I did a podcast episode with him and he talked about emotional contagion, of the fact that we catch the feelings of other people. And this actually starts to relate to my next question that I wanted to ask you. Because as leaders, we have a bigger impact on the emotional contagion of others because of our presence. And let's kind of bring that back, that ripple effect conversation, into this next piece, where a lot of the people that I work with and the listeners of Lead With Less are emerging managers. They're up and coming, or they're maybe new to management, or they're just wanting to be better people leaders. Why is knowing about happiness, knowing that, or how to build their happiness skill set, why is that important for them? Like, why is it important for them as a leader, but also for their teams? And this might relate to some of the ripple effect that you're talking about.
Yeah, to give one short sentence on why it's important, because, and look, I'm biased here, but I'm going to stand by this statement. Mastering the skills and science of happiness as a leader or manager or emerging leader or manager is the most competitive strategic advantage you can possibly possess as a leader or manager. And I'll say why. If we look from the perspective of the people you are leading, if I asked you to think back through your career and go, who are the leaders and managers that left a really positive and profound impact on me and I loved working for and I felt compelled to perform at a higher capacity for, chances are all of those leaders had developed at least some of the skills and science of happiness. Maybe they were empathetic, maybe they're compassionate, maybe they could have bold, clearing conversations. They were very skilled at those humanistic skills.
You're socially aware. That's definitely the one
right?
for me.
Exactly, right? So we can see that. On the flip side, if we go, well, what about the people who you're reporting to? What are their highest priorities? What do they care about? And they might go, oh, well, they care about traditional priorities in business sense, profit, productivity, performance. And this is what I've spent the last 5 years of my career saying. I did my master's thesis on how is happiness measured and defined in a workplace setting, and does it matter? And all the research showed it matters a hell of a lot, because if we care about performance, productivity, and profit, it doesn't take long to go upstream to go, well, hang on. When our employees and our staff are happier and more skilled in the science and skills of happiness, they make a better impact on our customers. And then that makes our customers become happier, and they pick up on the ripple effect and contagion effect of happiness. So they're more likely to refer and return and come back, which makes our shareholders happier. And that's just from the revenue line. If you also look at, well, hang on, when we have happier staff who are more skilled in the science of happiness, and happier leaders who are more humanistic leaders skilled in the science of happiness, we have lower turnover rates. Our recruitment costs aren't as much. We have less burnout. We have higher productivity. It's been shown that productivity goes up by, I believe it was 12 to 15% in organizations that have focused on learning the skills and science of happiness compared to those who haven't. And there was Sean Aker and his team did a study on sales teams specifically. So when sales teams learned the skills and science of happiness, it led to 37% higher sales compared to teams that hadn't. Like, I cannot say enough. It cannot be understated how critically valuable the skills and science of happiness are to any part of an organization. Whether I'm talking to the CFO and I'm talking the financial impact, whether I'm talking to the head of people and culture, I'm talking the humanistic impact, whether I'm talking to the head of customer experience, every part of an organization is positively touched when people learn about the skills and science of happiness. So to your point, if you are a leader or an emerging leader, you have this profound and inordinate opportunity compared to a lot of people to shape the skills and science of happiness, first and foremost in yourself, because we cannot pour from an empty cup, right? So learn them for yourself first, and then to share them with your team. And then by doing so, you become a really active contributor to that ripple effect of happiness, and everyone benefits from it.
When you said the single most strategic competitive advantage, of like, oh, that hits. When you say it like so clearly, it just makes so many things make sense. I mean, I come from an HR background, so people and culture is what I've been doing my whole career, creating environments where people can thrive and where people want to belong. And happiness really is at the core of that, right? When people are happier, they belong, they feel a sense of belonging, they feel a sense of connection, they feel a sense of being supported and recognized and all of those things. And then that's what then leads to the higher revenue, the higher sales, the higher productivity, the willingness to go above and beyond, because it's coming from that it's coming from that connection versus from that expectation. That's a point there. You've said a lot, like, I mean, you talk about like 70 skills. What would be, before we get into some practical ways that leaders can start building happiness, what would you say are the top 5 to 10, whatever you can rattle off in your brain, that leaders need to just at least think about, have at the top of their mind of, this is important for me to have on my radar. And then maybe they can choose their top 3 of, this is what I want to prioritize in upskilling. And then we can get into some practical tips on how they might be able to start doing that.
Yeah, I'm going to answer this in a couple of ways. I'm going to be cheeky here. I'm going to give people a bit of a pick your own adventure on this one. So I'll be the first to say, like, we teach 70 skills of happiness at BU Happiness College, but the order we teach them in and what the right way to do it is so contextual on the individual. Like, I just don't believe there's a one-size-fits-all pathway to mastering the skills of happiness for 8 billion people on the planet. So what I will say is, if you're super curious about getting an answer that's a bit more personalized to you, we've got 2 free tools that take under 7 minutes to take, and they're part of our social enterprise goals. So we actually donate a day of clean drinking water for everyone that's been completed. I think we're up to like 8,000 days of drinking water we've now done through these tools. They're our way of kind of going, hey, they're always going to be free. Let's give back to give people a chance. When people ask me questions like this, I'm like, there's not a one-size-fits-all answer, but here's a way that you could get something a bit more personalized. So I'll give you the links to those. I'm sure they'll be in the show notes. There's one called the Personal Happiness Scorecard, which is what skills, it'll give you a score on your happiness development. It'll tell you what skills you're doing really well, what 3 you probably need to focus on improving. So it'll give you your top 3 and bottom 3. It won't do all 70 because that's a massive report, but it will give you, here's your top 3, here's your bottom 3. Work on those bottom 3. We'll also link in, there's a self-checklist for how we make happy organizations. So if you are listening, you're a leader and you're like, okay, yeah, but how do I do that? Like, that's very much for my development. How do I do it for my team's development and organizational improvement? You probably want to lean more towards the checklist that we have for self-diagnosing happiness skills in the workplace setting. So we'll do a different one for that. So that's kind of the pick your own adventure journey.
Love it.
For those who, for whatever reason, don't follow those links, I mean, they're free and they do something good in the world. So my question would be why? But if you still choose not to, I respect that. I'll share with you. I've been debating this myself for the last 2.5, 3 years, because I've been writing my next book on happiness and the skills of happiness. And obviously I can't fit 70 skills of happiness into one book. It would be bigger than the Bible. It would be an absolute tome that would just break bookshelves. And when I was working with my publisher, initially they said, what's the most important 10? And I wrote 10 down and they went, okay, we can't even fit those into this book. How do we get it down to 5? So I mean,
doesn't that just mean that there's like, version 1, version 2? It's
I did joke.
Give me a full book deal then.
I've joked with them. I'm like, first book, working title, How to Be Happy. Book 2, How to Be Happier. It's like, here's 5 more skills. Just keep them coming. So the 5 we landed on is like, okay, if I could snap my fingers and everyone in the world learned 5 skills, what would be the 5 that I hope people would learn to be happier? First and foremost, expand your emotional intelligence. That shouldn't come as a surprise. It's one of the most rigorously researched and scientifically backed skills of happiness. In the book, I break down a little bit further that, like, technically that's not even a skill in and of itself. That's a collection of skills. Because I talk
about 5 skills within that one
Exactly,
skill.
Right?
Yeah.
So I've kind of been cheeky. I worked in some extra ones. I was like, yeah, don't worry, publisher. I'm just going to do 5 skills. And the very first chapter, I'm like, this is not a skill on its own. There are a bunch in there. But start in that sort of vein. Looking at, do you have the ability to articulate your emotions, to understand them, to manage them well? That would be step 1. Step 2, learn the skill of looking inward. So much of our life these days, our attention is a huge economy. You look at some of the world's wealthiest companies, they are focused on keeping your attention on them. Social media is a huge one, right? We're starting to lose the skill of self-reflection and self-awareness because of that. And a lot of us are getting stuck in this trap of the answer is out there somewhere. And a lot of the time, the right move for you as an individual is inside of you. It's just, I'm a big believer in the saying, fear yells where intuition whispers. It's very hard to tune to that intuition if we're not skilled at looking inwards. So whether you do that through meditation, journaling, coaching, whatever you do, like, find a way to reflect on yourself and make that a consistent practice. Third skill is then retraining your brain. And so this is about overcoming I don't care what anyone says, this is going to be weird coming from a happiness researcher, but stick with me. I don't believe any of us are bored optimists. I think many generations ago, if we were out foraging for food and we heard a rustle in the bushes next to us, all the optimists went, oh, that's our friend from the cave next door and they've come to help collect berries. They died, right? And all the natural pessimists who had a negative cognitive bias went, that's a threat. I need to be ready.
We're running.
We're running or we're ready to fight. We are the successful outcome of generations of worst case scenario thinkers. So if you ever think, is it just my brain doing this? No, it's everyone's brain. But thanks to neuroplasticity, we can retrain it, we can shift that, we can broaden our perspective and not get stuck in it. So chances are our brain's better at noticing what goes wrong. If 10 things go well in your work week and one goes horribly, you will remember the one that goes horribly more clearly. You'll ruminate on it. This is human nature. We can retrain that. So there are tools and techniques to expand that. That is a skill that I think is critically valuable. Learning how to broaden our perspective and see the good in ourselves in the world, not just the bad. Our fourth skill out of the 5 would then be knowing yourself deeply. So whereas the first one is start learning to look inwards, this one's about then bringing clarity to, okay, well, what does a happy, successful life look like to me as an individual? What are my values? What matters to me? What's my vision for a fulfilling life?
Who do I want to be?
100%. What makes me me? Right? So many people come to the college, I say, what do you want? And they go, self-confidence, self-worth, self-esteem, self-trust. And I go, these are all really valuable things that start with the same bloody word for a reason. Who is yourself? Who is yourself? And the amount of people who look at me, I don't care if they're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, and they go, I actually have no idea. Because I've spent most of my life being what I need to be for other people. I'm focused
Or just
on
being what I need to be to survive. If we're talking
100%.
about how the brain works, we're wired for
100%.
survival. I will do what I can to fit in, to belong, to conform.
Right? People go, how do I be a great parent, partner, colleague? But it's like, no, how do you be a great you? Because how do you hope to have self-confidence if you don't know who you are yet? That's like having confidence in a stranger. Right? So fourth skill, get to know yourself so uncomfortably deeply. Right? And then the last skill that I made the cut for the top 5 was then bring a sense of direction to your life more. So this is more about, okay, well, now that I know myself well, now that my brain's got a bit more, positively geared thinking, not just worst case scenario thinking, now that I can self-reflect, now that I'm managing my emotions better, what do I want to do with this? What do I want to do with this time that I have here? And I don't care if you want to think short term, go, what do I want to do with the time that I'm a leader? The time that I have to influence this workplace and this organization and the people who I lead? Or you go, what do I want to do with the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life? With the time that I have in this life, what impact do I want to leave behind? And I think the more we bring clarity to that, the more I see people get energized about their life and they get excited and they feel that sense of direction. So yes, in a long-winded answer to your question, go do those tests for yourself, for your workplace and for your own development, but then also just start thinking about those first 5.
Yeah, I resonate with those 5 really deeply because that is every self-development journey, right? When you start the self-development road, when you start walking down that path, those are the things that you're grappling with of who am I? What is my mind doing? What do I actually want from my life? How do I let go of the things that have brought me to this point that no longer serve me? How can I choose to reframe that or hold on to the things that do help me and do serve me, but then let go of the rest? And yeah, I think that last one is also really key around what do you want to do with your time and what do you want to do with your life? What is your direction? Because that also gives that sense of purpose, but also that sense of progress. That's because we need that. We need that feeling of progress. That's also very innate in us, right? We need to feel like we're moving, that we are creating, and that we are to some extent changing, whether that's either way, right? Like we know that as humans, we start dwindling when we become stagnant, when we start to become complacent. So yeah, I really, really love those. And I think it's also important as leaders to think about this for yourself, but also how are you nurturing these types of conversations with your team? And as a new leader, that might seem and sound really scary because you're like, oh my God, how am I supposed to have these conversations with my people? But they can just be really small questions. Like, what does the next year or 2 look like? You're in this role right now. What are your ambitions for the next year or 2? It doesn't have to be like, what are you doing with the purpose of your life? You don't have to ask those kind of questions. Or, from some mindset work, I do a lot of mindset work with my clients because I think that's one of the most underrated areas that people spend time learning about and knowing. And I think a lot of people feel quite powerless to their mind. It's like, oh, well, I am just like this, or this is just the way that I think. It's like, yeah, because that's the way that you've thought all these years, but you get to change that. And as a leader, you can just say like, hey, what's going through your brain right now? Like, or hey, you know, I noticed when I gave you this feedback, you reacted this way. Talk me through that. Like, what's the story? What's the story going on? As Brene Brown says, the story I'm telling myself is, what's the story you're telling yourself about this? Those are really subtle ways that as a leader, you can just start popping some of those questions into conversations just to even spark a little bit of curiosity for people. And I think this is where AI will never, I shouldn't say never, this is where AI will struggle, because AI requires a prompt and we need to be able to prompt to get it back. Whereas, and we can also just choose not to answer, right? If they ask us a reflection question, whereas if you're sitting in front of a coach and the coach asks you that, you're going to be like, I'm not going to answer that. Tell me why you're not going to answer that.
I have had some lovely coaching conversations where it's just silence at the game of how much I can hold out. And at one point, I'd be like, look, I've got the whole hour. So
yeah, I'll just sit here.
You tell me.
Yeah.
And I think you hit a really important word there that I want to pull out for everyone listening, this sense of approaching it all with curiosity. If we're any Ted Lasso fans, you know, the idea of curiosity over judgment, right? So
Ted,
tell me about it. So often when we approach these human skills, it does tend to be baked in a little bit of judgment and guilt and shame, because for some reason people seem to just assume that we're meant to be good at them. Even though we mentioned before, like, well, if I haven't practiced drawing since I was 7 or 8, then of course I draw like a 7 or 8-year-old. If you haven't practiced these skills, you're going to be very beginner with them. And so to approach that with a sense of curiosity rather than like, okay, well, I'm not good at self-reflection yet. Okay, cool. There's no judgment behind that. Let's practice it. Let's get curious about it.
Just ask one question.
Exactly. One of my favorite tools that my team uses as a saying is, hey, take me for a walk through your mind. Because like, we're just exploring. Like the walk is not to solve anything. It's not to do anything, but like whether I'm noticing a bit of resistance from one of my team members about something, or there seems to be a bit of a gap in communication, or we're just not aligning with each other on a project, so often we'll drop that line as a little like, hey, let's just go for a walk through this. Like, walk me through your mind on this.
And we just through your thinking process.
Exactly. Right. Like what led here? How do we get there? And it's just been so refreshing for all of us. Like there's been times for me as well as a leader, and it's someone who's had to learn the skills of leadership to build an organization and build a social enterprise. To be like, hey, well, yeah, if I go for a walk through my mind, I can see that, you know, like when we first started talking about this project 3-4 days ago, I was really resistant to it because I had a lot on my plate, and I feel like I didn't get enough information for you to make a good decision, but I didn't bring that up. And so it clears everything. Then, okay, well, let's address that rather than dealing with where we're at now, 4 days later, where you know, the walls are up and I'm not wanting to do this.
Yeah. That curiosity is so key. And I think that's also a critical skill in leadership, is being able to be curious and ask more questions before, or even if you are making assumptions, turn that into a question. That's a tactic I tell my leaders all the time. It's like, if you're making an assumption, what question do you need to ask to either validate or invalidate that? Because that's based on a gap that you're making an assumption. I really love that. Thank you so much for going against the grain and sharing those five skills. And I'm really looking forward to reading your book. But yeah, those freebie quizzes will be really great, and the checklist as well. But to kind of come back to some practicality, you've shared a few ways that people can start building the skill. And when you talked about the 5 skills, you shared some ways that people can start doing that. But if we just want to kind of sum everything up into top 2 to 3 tips that leaders can use to strengthen and build their happiness skills that they can put into practice right now when they switch off this episode and go into their day-to-day, what would they be?
I would give the 3 tips that I give to anyone who's learning any skill who wants to get through that conscious incompetence phase as fast as possible. I mentioned earlier in our conversation, my hope for our conversation today was that I take some people from unconscious incompetence with the skills of happiness. We thrust them into the stage of conscious incompetence where they go, shit, this is really hard and there's a lot I don't know. And I'm mindful to not leave them there and go, good luck, have fun. So the 3 tips I give for any skill, if you want to master any skill, I don't care whether it's learning an instrument, learning a language, learning the skills and science of happiness. First and foremost, stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before you. You do not need to start from scratch with this. If you want to learn guitar, go get a guitar teacher. If you want to learn Spanish, go speak to someone who speaks Spanish. If you want to learn skills and science of happiness, go learn from people who spend their life researching it. And you know what? I don't even care if it's not me, right? Like, I'm able to do what I do because I've been able to learn from great researchers and coaches and mentors and professionals. Like, learn from whoever you resonate with. If it's me, lovely, you've warmed my heart, I appreciate it. If it's not, go find someone who you do resonate with. Like, I'm not the right fit for 8 billion people on the planet, but there are people who really resonate with that. But find someone that you can learn from. And I don't care if it's not even in the sense of like working with them personally one-on-one. Go listen to
Just like
podcasts that
follow
they've
their
done.
content. Yeah.
Follow their content. Like, read their books. Like, it blows my mind that people spend entire careers and they distill that information into 300 pages, and I can just pinch that. So first and foremost, don't try to do it yourself. For some reason, we're weirdly stubborn as a species about like, I must do this myself. No, go learn from people who've spent their life doing it. Second one, use proven tools and strategies. This is a big one that is a bit of a gripe, I'll admit openly on air. I wrestle with my own industry sometimes because the coaching industry, self-help industry, very unregulated, wild, wild west. I think there's some really good practitioners out there and there's some really terrible ones. And there's some just absolutely doing money grabs that are hopeless. So find tools that are evidence-backed, that have research behind them, that you can, and also that kind of go, hey, find the right tool for you. We have people come to the college. We use 5 different modalities at BU Happiness College. We have members who get a ton out of positive psychology techniques and nothing out of acceptance and commitment therapy techniques. And then we have other members who get a ton out of acceptance and commitment therapy and nothing out of positive psychology. Like, I just don't think there's a one-size approach to living a happy, fulfilling life or mastering these skills. So if anyone's trying to tell you you're doing it wrong because the skill's not applicable, I would shy away from that and go, no, find the skill set that resonates with you and learn from that. So find people who are already doing it and researching it, find evidence-based skills and tools and practice them, and just learn 1 or 2 and then practice it. If there's something I said today that you're like, oh, that's interesting, I might try that, go try it. And then the third one, ideally, try to surround yourself with a bit of a community, because there is a collective element of learning a skill. Like, the best way to learn a language is, if I could pick you up and drop you in a country where that language was spoken, you had no other choice but to learn it, you would learn it pretty quickly. The same thing happens. So it's something we've been mindful of at the college, was I was like, I don't want this to just be like a one-on-one coaching program. I want people to feel connected to a sense of something bigger than them, sense of a ripple effect, sense of an impact, and also a sense of like-minded people, like a community of people who care about living a happy and fulfilled life and using that to make the world better. When you can be around that kind of energy, it does inspire something in you and it helps overcome those hurdles and those challenges that come when learning a skill. So, 3 tips: take something you've learned from today, find someone who's already doing it really, really well, ask to learn from them, learn skills and tools that are evidence-based and practical, and find the right fit for you. And then just find people that you resonate with who are also on that journey as well. And make this a shared experience, not just a solo experience.
Absolutely. And that community piece also, just that innately connects to us as human beings. Like, we do thrive in that community. And also it helps you feel less alone. Like, this is why I do group programs as well, because so many people are like, oh, I'm the only person that has self-doubt. I'm the only person that doesn't know the skill. I'm like, mate.
Yeah, really? Here's
you
20.
are not. Yeah, you are absolutely not. Here, I've got a group of them. Let's all come and talk about how we all don't know how to do those things.
Yeah.
And that's a really important part, because that then naturally breeds that compassion, that grace, that kindness, and that curiosity, because you're like, oh, and you start listening to these stories and you're like, oh, I never thought about it like that. Or oh, I never realized that I can hear myself in that story. And that just naturally creates that curiosity piece there. I love those. I really, really love those. And I agree with you around finding proven strategies and tools that resonate with you and that are backed, because the coaching industry is unregulated. You never know what you're going to get. So really making sure that you resonate with the people or the company or the brand or whoever you're going for, but that there is a real resonance there and that it feels really right. I think that's more important, rather than like, oh, I need to learn the skill, let's just get the first person or the cheapest. You really want to make sure that it's going to be the right value for you. I really, really love all of that, Declan. You've shared so much useful information. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel important to cover or to share?
I think maybe not that we haven't spoken about, but I would like to stress it again for the end of our conversation of like, everyone listening to this, I don't care if you are a leader or manager, if you're about to be a leader or manager, if you hope to be one day, everyone listening to this conversation today has the potential and opportunity to play their part in spreading a ripple effect of happiness. And I really deeply hope that for the people listening to this, that you choose to accept that responsibility and you choose to step into that and you get really conscious and intentional in the years that you've got ahead of you in making the world a little bit happier.
Oh, that's a call to action if I've heard one. Love it. That's powerful. Thank you. Thank you. I'm definitely up for the challenge, especially having a little 3-year-old. Yeah, definitely feel the need for it. And also just in the world that we're living in right now, I think it's more important than ever with everything that's going on. So I have some staple questions that I love to just do some rapid fire with all of the guests at the end of our episodes. Quick answers. What is the best advice you've ever received that's helped you be a great leader?
Ironically, it's what I ended up naming our happiness college. Be you. Stop trying to be everyone else. Stop trying to mimic the leaders that you look up to. Take elements of them, but craft into something that's unique. Like, be yourself.
Yes. What is one thing that helps you feel courageous to do scary things?
My highest character strength is hope.
Ooh.
And looking back over my career in my life, I think that's been a really strong contributor to me doing difficult and scary things that I wasn't sure were going to work out, was this sense of hopefulness about the future that we might create or the outcome that we might achieve. So that is something that I don't take for granted. I'm very grateful. That's my highest developed strength.
Oh, that must just tie so beautifully with optimism as well, being able to recognize reality and then go, and we will move through it, and there will be something better at the end. That is a powerful combo. Wow, that's so cool. And what is one boundary that you uphold that supports you to be your best?
A recent one that I've started doing is I've been way more intentional about what I say no to. So just as a whole with boundaries, and what I mean by that, so for me, I used to think that because my work is so social enterprise oriented, it's so focused on making a positive impact, there would be a disservice of me to say no to a speaking event, an interview, taking on a client. Like, we would do everything we could to create scholarships for people to come to the college. And I just realized that what it led to was a breeding ground, A, for burnout and exhaustion for me, but B, for a little bit of resentment. So there was definitely a point in building BU Happiness College where I started to feel resentful towards what I was building. And I'm such a huge fan now of the saying, resentment only grows behind closed doors. It only happens when we're not having the right conversations, when we're not upholding the right boundaries. So yeah, recently I've started being like, hey, I'm not speaking at conferences for free anymore. I've spent 80 grand in student loans learning this stuff. I've spent 10 years building it. Like, you can pay me for this. You know, we still have scholarships and ways that we try to help people get to the college, but it's not as much built on me trading my time anymore. And so for me, just learning how to go, it's okay to say no to things and we can still make a really positive impact. That doesn't make me a bad person.
Yeah. And you see this quite a lot, like in the coaching industry, I find. It's like, oh, just come speak here and you get exposure. I'm like, exposure is not going to pay my mortgage.
Yeah.
So no, you're going to pay me. Otherwise, I'm just not going to go. I'll find another paid gig. And also when we're overextending in that way, because it's like, well, if you want people to be happy, you should do it for free. It's like, well, you don't go to work for free. Just because I'm not going to a corporate doesn't mean that in order for me to actually be of value, I need to be fed, I need to be clothed, and I need to be housed, right? So it's like the more that I'm taken care of in that way, the more valuable I can actually be. And when we don't honor those things, it dilutes that value, and not straight away, but as you said, like that resentment builds over time, which then dilutes the value because then you just don't want to show up in the same way. And yeah, you start to disconnect. You start to disconnect from the value and the importance of that work. So I love that one. I think it's so important. This was an amazing conversation. There's so many things I feel like we could go on tangents about. So maybe I have to have you back on again once the next chapter of your life comes into settledness with new parenthood. But for those who have listened and they want to find out more about you, more about BU Happiness College, or just to follow some of your unhingedness that you share, where can people find you so we can pop that in the show notes?
A few places. So if you search any of the social platforms for Declan Edwards or That Happiness Guy, I tend to pop up. Also, if you're a podcast person, which I assume you are because you're listening to one at the moment, I'd obviously love to invite you to come over to my podcast called How to Be Happy. Every week I share more skills and science of happiness. So you can definitely follow along there. And then, as we mentioned earlier, those scorecards and quizzes to take for yourself to get a bit more of an ingrained, personalized exploration of your own happiness skills. Definitely take those as well.
Perfect. And you've got a new book coming out, so we'll also link the waitlist for that as well. So if anyone's interested in getting Declan's new book, you can be the first to know. So we'll put that all in the show notes so people can come and find you. And as always, please let us know what you've thought about the podcast. We would both love to hear. If you've got any questions, any thoughts, we would always love to hear it. And as always, please leave a rating and a review. We would always appreciate that. So again, thank you so much, Declan. It has been such a privilege to have this conversation with you, and thank you for giving your time and energy to Lead with Less.
Thank you so much, Tasha. I appreciate it.
Hey, that's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening to Lead with Less. It means the world to me if you could take a moment to leave a rating and a review on Apple, or just rate with 5 stars on Spotify. It means a lot to the growth and the expansion of the podcast. And if you know any other people leaders who could do with a dose of inspiration to level up their leadership skills, then please forward on this podcast to them. I would really appreciate it. And as always, if you have any feedback or have any thoughts, please message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or email. I'd love to hear from you.